Hey, welcome back to the Common Ground North Dakota podcast. I'm Heather.
And I'm Jen.
I've been a chef for 10 years.
And I'm a registered dietitian. We've all heard the saying, farm to table. But what if the conversation was table to farm?
Join Jen and I as we sit down with ag experts to dig in and find out more about North Dakota agriculture. Welcome back to Common Ground North Dakota podcast. I'm Heather.
I'm Jen.
And we're in studio for another episode.
Another fun episode of lots of learning.
We're little learners.
We are.
Mm-hmm.
And what did we say last time? We are...
Egg expert, but like in a cool TikTok way.
Yeah.
Shoot. Eggsperts?
Eggspurts? Or
Yeah.
egg... Yeah.
Oh gosh. My age is showing.
I know, same. We'll be back on our next episode and we'll figure it out.
We'll figure that out.
What we're going to call ourselves. Egg soomers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, today we're touching on a really important topic.
Absolutely. I think it's important for all people.
Yes.
to understand.
Mental health is the topic.
Yep.
And like you said, I mean, everyone needs, but I think especially within agriculture.
We're learning about it. Like the stressors.
The stress. And then it's like your family's legacy. You have this land that was handed down to you. I just imagine. And then the variables that are out of your control.
Yes. The uncontrollable. What can you control?
Yes.
What can't you? And I think of the North Dakota mentality. We're all tough.
So
we don't
true.
need to talk to anybody about our mental health. I got it.
Yes.
So we want to make it normal.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So we have a guest today, Calli Thorne. So Calli, welcome.
Welcome, Calli.
Hey, you guys. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for coming. I feel like mental health is something we hear all the time, but we don't really talk in depth about it. So we're excited to have you here to help us out.
Yeah, and to talk kind of first about your background, both in agriculture and then tying it into what you're currently doing now.
Yeah, I always feel like that's such a loaded question. And even when your producer reached out to me, I was kind of like, wait, what are we going to talk about? Because I do a lot of different things in life, as do a lot of women. So I am actually a fourth generation on our family's operation. We are north of Watford City. So when people ask, I often have to explain, well, we're probably 2 hours from Canada. So I try and talk really clear because I get made fun of with our accents.
Yeah,
we're the same.
We
probably
can relate.
2 hours from Canada and about an hour from Montana.
Okay.
And this is maybe not always typical, but we are on my family's operation. So my husband is from South Dakota, and he moved up to my family's place when we got married and stuff. And so I've got 3 little kids. They are 12, 10, and 6 years old, and they are the 5th generation actually on our operation.
Wow.
That's cool. Have that legacy.
Yes.
So what do you raise on your farm?
So we are a cow-calf operation, which means within the next month or so, we'll have little baby calves around.
Yay, we love baby calves.
Also, right? And we also have a backgrounding feedlot, which not a lot of people always know definitions, and we like to throw a lot of terms out in agriculture, which not everybody understands. But that just means once the calves are weaned or taken away from their moms, then they go into one of our feedlots for a little while to be fed and taken care of and stuff. So we do that. We run a lot of yearlings. They're about a year old out on grass.
Okay.
And then when COVID hit, we really ramped up beef sales. And so we sell a lot of beef as well.
More people were cooking at home.
Yes. So have you maintained that? Have you maintained that growth since COVID?
Yeah, I always tell people that first year from about April to December, we worked with over 200 families in just those few months. I mean, it was wild, as everybody knows. It was almost that perfect storm where people couldn't find beef in the grocery store. A lot of butchers weren't butchering at that time, or they were closed. Feedlots were getting backed up. I mean, it was really a good or bad storm, however you want to say it. And so we're still selling a lot of beef and have some other actually exciting things in the works right now. So,
ooh, teaser.
Yep. Love it.
Okay.
I'll have to come back sometime and tell more, but that's about it for now.
Yeah, I know. We will have to have you back.
So can we buy your beef? Am I going to have to drive there?
You can. We don't ship it, though.
Okay.
I get asked that a lot. We don't ship it, but there's a lot of people that pick it up. We use a beef place up in Williston. They do the butchering for us.
Okay.
And so a lot of people pick up their beef, or I go to Bismarck a lot and I meet people if they need me to meet. And I've been to Fargo and make deliveries if needed.
Good, Calli. We can make it happen.
Yep, we for sure can. So in your other role, Calli, speaking of what we were talking about in the beginning, mental health first aid and speaking, tell us a little bit about that and like, how did that come about and where are you at now with things?
That's kind of a wild story in all reality when I think about it. But everybody's right. Are anybody's stories the way they thought they would be?
No, you just have to go with it. I feel like take a chance.
I think sometimes people see me and they're like, oh, she must work in the city and do these jobs. And it's like, no, actually, some days I'm dressed nice and cute and I'm presenting. And some days I'm in muck boots and we're chasing cattle on horseback, or I'm in the tractor. So
that's awesome.
I like the variety, though. That's great.
Yeah.
So I went to NDSU and I have a degree in animal science. And when I graduated from college, I worked for NDSU Extension for almost 5 years. So I was doing 4-H, all the community things, and absolutely loved that. Then kids come along and sometimes you don't know what you want to do. So I ended up staying. I left that job and I've been a full-time entrepreneur ever since. So like in my middle 20s for over a decade now, I've been running my own businesses. I was in direct sales for probably 7-8 years in a leadership position. But then the last 3 or so years, I've worked with the John Maxwell team. So if you've heard of John Maxwell, world's leadership expert, he's written over 80 books.
Ooh.
People have probably seen him or quoted him at some point in time. So I get to do a lot of work on leadership, values, mindset, perspective, communication, a whole list of things. And the fun is sometimes being out west here, I'm often in front of oil field companies or bankers, different organizations and teams doing training or speaking for them. But I've also gotten myself, of course, in front of a lot of agricultural groups just because of my background and what we do currently.
Well, and those things are so important within agriculture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like everybody needs some leadership skills, whether it's kids or adults. I'm in front of a good mix of people.
Absolutely. So talk about like your mental health first aid now programming. And now do you train other people or do you talk to groups with that? Describe that program a little bit to us.
Right. Good question. So a lot of people, what's interesting is they haven't heard of that. So I'm just curious. Had you ever heard of mental health first aid?
I
haven't.
Yeah. And I work with the university system as a dietitian and sports dietitian and a healthcare system. So we use that a lot. Just recognizing signs and symptoms of maybe depression, anxiety, mental health issues, and what to do with it. A lot of times, like, that's so important. Like, just if you're hearing certain signs and symptoms, like, what do you do with that information? How do you encourage that person to maybe get some assistance? And where do you go, right?
And that's the huge thing of really what the class touches on.
Okay.
And so I actually took the class myself because I think I often compare it to first aid CPR.
Yep.
I mean, the crazy thing is I have taken first aid CPR probably 3 times in my life just because a workplace required it or in college, I needed more credits one semester. So I was like, I'll take first aid again because why not?
Why not?
But the good thing is, I guess, I've never actually had to use it. I mean, yes, I've got children and they get cuts and scrapes, but I've truly never had to use first aid CPR. But I think if everybody was asked right now, have you ever been in a situation where somebody seemed like they were struggling or somebody said something to you and you did not know what to do?
Yes.
Right.
And I was in that situation a few years ago with a friend and she told me she was struggling. You know, I think we all expect that typical answer when we say, hey, how are you doing? Everybody says,
oh, good.
Yeah, doing great.
I'm fine.
And we do that when we're not fine, right? But the thing that was hard for me was she said, I'm not well. And I remember I just stood there. I mean, I had no idea what to do or say.
Right. It's hard because you don't know what to say.
Because you don't expect that. And especially from some people, right? You expect that, well, you've got everything you need. How could you not be fine? What's the problem? And fast forward a few months later, I learned that she had attempted suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And she's still here today is the great thing. So this is a really long story short, but I remember that sickening feeling I had because I did nothing. I mean, for somebody to actually confide in you and then you did nothing. So long story short, I ended up taking this class. I learned a ton. So I became mental health first aid certified, took the class. And I thought it was such a profound class. And I still have this true belief that I think the world would be a different place if everybody had a training like this. Yep. And so
true.
A handful of months go by and I decided to become a trainer then. So I'm now certified to teach the class and can put people through it and stuff. So a class is, you can have up to 30 people in the class. Obviously, we don't want big classes because we do a lot in a day. It's a full day class.
Okay.
And it's just like you said, the big thing is what you learn as a mental health first aider is how do I show up? How do I notice the signs and symptoms? And what can I do to get that person the help that maybe they need? And it might be just a conversation. It might be linking them to the professionals. It doesn't make us professionals. So we're running around diagnosing people. That's not what we get to do. But how can I, just like when you come upon a car accident,
how do you respond?
I don't get to do heart surgery, but what do I do in that situation?
I find it hard though when those instances happen. I always think to myself, am I listening here? Am I asking questions here? How do you decide which to do?
You know, it's funny because I have to just ask my friends because my friends know that, okay, I'm their friend and I'm also mental health first aid certified and I'm a coach. I do a lot of life coaching with clients as well. And so I will just point blank ask them like, hey, do you want me to just listen right now? Do you want me to side with you? Do you need me to like just be a friend or do you want coaching on this or are you really struggling and we just need to see where we go with this?
Sure.
Yeah, like asking them almost, how can I help you? What is, the goal?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's in the listening. You get a gut feeling of where you need to go with it too. I mean, they might just need, people can be having a hard day and just need somebody to talk to. Just because we're having a hard day doesn't mean that, well, you better go see a counselor, right? I mean, we can be quick to jump to that, but sometimes human connection goes a long ways. And I think we realized that the last couple years of having
how important it is.
That's where this leads into agriculture, right? Why people can struggle so much is because for a lot of people, it can be a very isolating business that they're in.
Yeah. And stuff comes up that they can't control, like the weather. Like, and
you
like
hit
that's
the nail on the head. Yeah.
You just can't control it. And like taking that control out and like Heather said, it's their livelihood. That's what they support their families with. And that's a hard thing to deal with.
We all get stressed out about our jobs, but I feel like agriculture is this other level, right? Because it's so personal.
Yeah, and you said that word earlier, like the uncontrollables that we deal with. And it is. Everybody's got stress and things they deal with, but it's sometimes when I sit back and think about what we take on in agriculture, it's truly mind-blowing. I mean, what we deal with, financials play a huge role into it too, because it's not these little buy-ins, whether it's cattle or crops. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I work a lot in the mindset field of things too, and looking at perspective. Yes. And I think that helps a lot of people with their mental health is, okay, do we see this as a risk? Because I could truly live every day thinking, what's the risk today? What's going to be the chance I take? Where might I mess up? But I constantly work on, but where's the opportunity? Where can we pivot? What might work for us?
Yep.
And whether I'm working with clients or doing the mental health first aid stuff, I will tell them or remind them, hey, life is 50-50. It's going to be 50% hard and challenging and sad, and there's going to be loss and things that we didn't expect to come up.
Right.
And then 50% is going to be fun and exciting and enjoyable. And I was actually at a mental health conference about a year ago, and one of the state mental health experts in North Dakota. I had to ask her because sometimes even I struggle with, I always tell people, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. I have that degree in animal science.
Right.
But I do a lot of leadership training. Like, how do we get people from here to there and chase these goals and live an incredible life? And then why is it we have some people that struggle with mental health, and where do these challenges come from?
Yeah.
And even though I'm not a huge expert in all of that, I had to ask her, I said, how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah.
And she told me without skipping a beat, she said, kids and adults today don't know how to, what do you think she said? It starts with a C.
Compartmentalize? I don't know.
Commit.
All good answers. Everybody always has good answers,
What
even
is
though
it?
it's not what she...
Communicate?
She said that, ooh, that one always comes up, but I agree. We maybe don't know how to communicate. She said that kids and adults don't know how to cope.
Oh, yeah.
So, I
Okay.
mean, think about it. If 50% of our life or more is going to be hard and challenging, and somebody's going to say something mean to you today, or
Right.
there's going to be a flat tire, or you're not going to get the job promotion that you wanted.
How do you deal with it?
Now, how do I cope? How do I deal with it?
They're just
and
a
I'll
puddle.
often say,
You're so right.
I mean, because people buffer. That's what I always say. What do you buffer with when things don't go your way? And I mean, I like chocolate chips. I might grab a handful of chocolate chips, right? Or all of a sudden we're scrolling on social media.
like
or
mindless
we're getting,
kind of things.
Yeah.
Yes.
But people will also turn to other things that don't serve them.
Right.
It's like, well, maybe I'll just have a drink of alcohol because I don't like how I feel right now.
Yeah.
Don't
And so
want
I'm
to
gonna
deal with these
buffer-
feelings.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm going to buffer with something that makes me feel better for the moment.
Right.
You know, I'm going to buffer with, I'm going to have a cigarette or then a drug. Or I mean, it's just, that's kind of where it can start. And then it's not a big enough hit for me. It's not giving me that dopamine, and we maybe turn to other things. And so learning how to cope, whatever
This
those
is
stressors
huge
are.
because, there was a big hockey tournament for my kids this past weekend, and they lost every single game. Okay. So lots of emotions.
Yep.
So if you could maybe give me some tips on how to teach kids how to cope. I mean,
That is a thing.
I sat and talked about character building, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they didn't want to hear that.
Yeah. Are you having fun? Like what gives you enjoyment?
Yes.
Like,
you know?
you try bring it back and you're like, well.
They have these big feelings, but
Yeah.
you're right. They just don't know how to cope.
And I think that's a huge thing that they have to see it in us too. I think that is a big thing. One of my favorite quotes is, more is caught than is taught. So I can try and tell my kids, same as you guys, like, here's how you should do it, and you should show up, and you should build resiliency. But they're watching us. I think that's one of the benefits of agriculture.
Okay.
My kids are watching us every single day. They see a new calf when it's born in brand new life, but they also see death, and they see loss, and they see what it means to us when we don't get rain for X amount of days and we're in a record drought and things like that. And so they watch, how do I show up? Do I get frustrated? Do I binge? Do I buffer? Do I take it out on other people? Or maybe I take some time to breathe. Maybe I take some time to go for a walk to get some fresh air. Maybe I make sure I don't miss my Bible study and things like that. And so it was eye-opening to me. It makes me laugh because my daughter's basketball team, isn't this the hard thing? Her team doesn't win a whole lot either. And my son, who's 2 years younger, they win like every tournament.
Oh, that makes
That's
it
hard.
extra hard. Yes.
So that's always fun to deal with, right? And try and figure that out. But I'll share this story. I once learned, so that firstborn, my daughter, she's kind of, I can see me in her too, which has its pros and cons, where she's just this go-getter. Let's be organized. Let's be detailed. I mean, she can run the ship if I'm gone, and she's 12 years old. And one year I was trying to get her to go out for track. And I was like, you should try it though. You're young. You need to experience these things. And she just didn't want to, like, fought me on it. Well, she was young enough. I pushed her into it. I said, well, you're signed up. I'm taking you there right now to track.
Oh, no. Yes.
And it wasn't until a few weeks later, she admitted to me why she didn't want to go out for it. And what she said really broke my heart, but it was eye-opening for me. And she said, I didn't want to go out for track because I knew I wouldn't be the fastest kid there.
Expectations.
That's the whole thing in life that I think people need to realize too, is that there's these choices. You can get an 8th place ribbon and one person is going to think, I sucked, I messed up, I didn't do very good. And then another person is going to take that middle road where it's kind of like, you know what? Golly, I wish I could have done better, but 8th place is pretty good. I did as good as I could today. And I think that's the huge thing I had to say to her. I said, you can't go your entire life not trying new things because you think you're not going to come out number one. I said, you're going to miss out on so much life just by believing that if I'm not number one, I shouldn't go out and try it.
Yes. And I think it's fear. It's fear of failure. It's fear of like that. And we can talk ourselves in and out of things many times. But if you know like some techniques to help you think through those, if you have that safety net or those people that you can trust to talk with, right? I think that's important. So you mentioned some techniques, right? And like what to look for. So do you have any tips for our folks that are listening today? Like what are some things that you teach in your class? Can you give us a little sample?
Yeah. So the great thing when we go through the class, like I said, we're really looking at what are those signs and symptoms of people. So it's noticing, right? There's early signs and symptoms, worsening signs and symptoms, and then crisis. So we're looking at these different things, those who have gone through this class. I think the class just brings so much more awareness. Yes. They are so much more aware of their employees or their friends or their family or just people in the community that they maybe don't even know. You can tell if somebody looks agitated, or if your best friend usually shows up for coffees at 9 a.m. on Wednesday and all of a sudden she's shown up a little bit later than usual and she's pretty prompt, or if they're looking more disheveled than usual. These are just things that we can notice and think, I wonder if something's a little off. And I think the biggest, simplest thing is bringing it up to them, having a conversation. I know sometimes it seems uncomfortable because it's like, maybe I'm overthinking this. Or I had somebody in my class even one time say that a friend confided in her who was really struggling. And she said to her friend, she said, but don't tell my husband. Oh. And we kind of paused and she said, so, I mean, what would you do? And I thought about it. I mean, there are no perfect answers, but I thought, I think I would rather have a friend that is upset at me for telling her husband, for seeking out help, for making connections, than a friend, because I almost lived that, than having a friend who is no longer with us and I did nothing.
Right. Like, you would never forgive yourself if you didn't say something. And I think sometimes it's hard to say something or to ask that question because you feel like maybe you're being intrusive, right? But then also it could be taken as someone cares about me. Someone notices this and they care about me.
Right. Yeah.
And that's actually what the research shows, is that early intervention is key. That's a huge thing. So the longer I wait and think on it, and it's like, oh, she didn't really seem like she was herself. Oh, I'm sure she's fine. Versus let me just shoot her a text and be like, hey, I've been thinking about you.
Everything okay?
But that's what they say, is that early intervention is key in making a difference. And for a lot of people, even if you talk particularly in suicide situations, if you bring it up to them more often than not, it shows that it is like a weight being lifted off their shoulders because it's finally somebody noticed. Finally, somebody has a little bit of an idea of the pain that I'm going through and is willing to talk to me.
Yeah. So they're not bearing the burden by themselves, maybe.
Right. And just putting it out there, right?
That's what they say. Yeah. It's kind of like shining a light on a dark area that somebody's facing right now.
Yeah.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many of these classes are offered in North Dakota? Do you know?
So there's a handful of different organizations that will put them on and stuff. That's the funny thing. Sometimes people are like, and who are you with? And I'm like, me. I'm with me, myself, and I. That's an entrepreneur for you, right? Yeah. And so a handful of them do them online. I love to do them in person. Yeah. So I travel. I'm very fortunate here in Watford City, but also in Williston. I have to give Williston some credit. They have been at the forefront of this, and their chamber, for example, hosts quarterly public trainings.
That's great. Amazing.
And so I go and put those on for the day for them once a quarter, and anybody can come to that. I mean, I've had veterinarians, I've had farmers, I've had stay-at-home moms, I've had business executives. So it's open to anyone. But then I also do private ones. So again, I got to give some kudos to Williams County there. They have all of their county employees. All of the Williams County employees are taking this training.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so that's been pretty phenomenal for them to put it together. Just a couple of weeks ago, I've done their sheriff's department. I even did their road crew, which is kind of entertaining, as you might imagine. It's a class of nearly 30 men. And it's like, you guys look really excited to be here today. And it's like they'd rather be blading the roads and stuff. But I can tell you, I had one guy come up at about the midway point of class, and he almost kind of whispered it to me. And he's like, hey, this class is so much better than I thought it would be. And I laughed because I know that a full day of mental health first aid training, it does not sound thrilling. But if I can make this sound good, it is a lot of fun. People learn so much. There's videos, there's activities, there's different ways of learning throughout the class. And I have testimonies after testimonies of just the class and the impact that it had on them. I've even had counselors and therapists and people within the healthcare system take the class and say, everybody should have this.
Yes.
I learned so much, and everybody should take this sort of training.
Well, and it's so great to hear that communities and businesses are doing this because it's an investment.
It is.
In your people.
Right. And especially, do you feel like after COVID, like that social isolation, I think there's more, like it's, and I almost think that we're hearing more about mental health now, and I think it's becoming more socially acceptable, or that's my hope maybe. Like people are talking about it a little bit more and like making counseling acceptable. There's like employee wellness programs and taking more focus on taking care of people than there has been in the past.
And I think that's the thing. It is talked about a lot more, but I think some people are still lost. Like, but I don't know exactly what to do or how to show up. And we talk about the stigma. We talk about how there's so many logistics. I mean, even it's for everybody. But I mean, I tie it back to agriculture and why our numbers are so high in mental health is the challenges that they face, the stigma, I'll be fine tomorrow. I've got work to do. I mean, who's going to plant the crops or feed the cattle? I mean, how ridiculous to take time off to go see a counselor.
Right. There's no time for that.
Is the mindset. And when you're in these rural communities, which so many people are, everybody knows number one, access. Yes, but everybody knows my vehicle. They know what I drive. And so why is Calli parked at the therapist's office today? What's wrong with her? Or who's going to watch my kids? I'm not going to take a day. I'm not going to ask my husband to watch the kids just so I can go see a counselor.
Right.
These are all these thoughts and stigmas that we have put on our head. But I think one of the biggest things going back to what we can do to help is, and there's a lot of people that don't always like this term, but self-care. In other words,
it's true.
Phrase it differently if you need to, but Farmer Joe, like, what do you actually enjoy? If I actually asked you, besides sitting in your tractor or riding horse or spending time with cattle, what do you enjoy doing? Do you go fishing? Do you go hunting? Do you like spending time with family? How does a walk impact you? Or we could go into health too, right?
Yes,
like
we can.
What you're eating.
Yes.
I mean, I could talk about that stuff all day too, and the impact that it has, the sleep we get, the amount of stress that we have in our life. That's a whole nother price soapbox, but it ties into mental health, and I don't think people realize that.
Right.
You know, we start to get short and frustrated, and it's like, well, did you eat today?
Right.
What did you eat? What did you get for sleep last night? What are you saying yes to? And it's not even filling your cup, and it's not listed as a priority for you.
Calli, I feel like you ask a lot of the questions that I ask in my nutrition visits. What are your goals today? What was everything you ate? How much sleep did you get? Are you drinking a lot of caffeine? Like, maybe you don't have 10 energy drinks.
Right. It's all tied together, right? You can't.
Yes. Like in how they function, how they show up. Like you said, like for that day, maybe what's looming in the future. But again, like my husband always says, your workplace is not going to shut down if you take some time off. It's not. Like, but maybe the farmers, like putting that into perspective, that's their own business.
Yeah.
It's not like they work for a corporation, and maybe some do, but like it's their corporation. They're like the CEO of their own corporation. And how do they then delegate that out? Because the work has to get done. The cows still need to get fed. The crop still needs to be harvested. However, I don't know of a farmer that's singly doing all that. It seems like there's like support people. Would you agree with that, Calli?
That's what I was going to say. I mean, this industry, I feel like, is known for, you've all heard of the different groups that will come in and help, and I'm drawing a blank right now, that are in crisis or that need somebody to come combine.
Like farm rescue or like those types of things. Yeah.
Exactly. Or you think about a branding, how many people show up? And so it is this community of people that are willing to come and help if needed, of course.
Yeah. I mean, very tight-knit, supportive of each other. So I think it's almost like reminding, like, who are your network of people?
Right. And
like we talk about that all the time on the podcast. Like, who's your network? And they're always getting together with different groups and, you know, talking about practices, talking about policy. Like, and I think.
And it's so important to have them, to be able to connect with them and take time. I think if you haven't had those connections for a while, I mean, think about it, even if you run out to coffee with friends or you stop at a neighbor's and it's like, oh, I feel so much better just having that conversation with them. But for the people who think like, I don't have time or I can't take a day off, because you hear that mentality all the time. Yes. And I do a lot of coaching, and that is simply a thought. As much as people or different generations even want to fully believe that that is the truth, that I cannot take a day off, they believe it's 100% factual, that the place would probably fall apart. And I have to help people understand that it's just a thought. And how is that thought serving you? I know we've heard those questions before, but the reality is you're getting burned out. What's going to happen if you weren't here? Like, if you don't take a little bit of time for yourself?
What's the alternative?
Or I'll often ask, like, how is that working for you right now?
Me too. I love that question.
Believe, for you to believe like that I'm the only person that can do this, or that I can't take a day off and we can't do it that way. I mean, there's a lot of that in agriculture, right? Well, grandpa always did it this way, or this is how we market our animals, or this is what we've always planted at this time. And how's that working for you? If it's working, great. But if we complain about it every year, maybe there needs to be a change.
Change is hard. Change is hard for people. Behavior changes, especially because you get in that rut, right? And getting folks to do some behavior change or modification or like wellness work. It's a hard job. It's hard, but
people can do it.
Small things. Right. And that's kind of what you're getting at too, Calli. Like with that mental health first aid, it's recognizing signs. What can I do as a friend, as a peer, to support those that I care about? Like, and it could be like, hey, I just need to listen. Let's just connect every week, or let's have coffee together, or hey, do you need to go see somebody?
Like, just knowing someone's there. Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's a practice. It's a skill. It's just like so many other things. I mean, even those things that maybe we're stuck in our ways, or these thoughts or beliefs we have, it's like, if I want, it might take a little practice, but I can change those thoughts too, and I can begin to pivot things.
Right.
Well, and I think too, going back to your coping strategies, I think the same can be said for this, emulating those behaviors. Instead of telling my friend, hey, you should go to therapy, why don't I go to therapy and take care of my mental health? And then...
Right. That's it. If I do a 90-mile challenge with people. So the challenge is you have to walk a mile every day intentionally. Like no skips, no excuses. And I've done it for almost 5 years, not skipping.
That's awesome.
And that'd be the whole example, though, if I was like, well, you should just go for a walk, but I'm not willing to do it myself.
Or I don't like walking, or my hips hurt. And then you hear all the excuses. Like that would be somebody telling me, Jennifer, you have to go swimming every day. That's the analogy that I use. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I don't like water in my face. And like, I'd have every excuse not to. My bathing suit doesn't fit. Oh, it's too cold out. My hair would freeze, and like all these things.
And then what I always say to people, though, right? Because that's what our brain does. Our brain
it makes
is
excuses.
Like, why you shouldn't do it. I mean, it's telling us
like the two sides.
Why you, almost back to the track story, right? You shouldn't go out for it because you might look like a fool and you might be slow. So don't do it because we want to be comfortable.
Yes.
But I always tell people, what if you gave just as much energy to the reasons why you should do it?
Right.
Why you should reach out to a friend, why you should read that book, why you should try that new business.
Right.
I mean, you could do whatever example that you want, but we're so quick to say why we can't, why we shouldn't.
Talk ourselves out of things.
But why should we? Give the same amount of energy to that
I love
question.
Change your perspective. Well, you've taught us a lot. I was going to say you've definitely shined a light.
Yeah,
you have.
Definitely.
So beyond today, where can people reach out to you if they want to take your course?
Yeah, if they want to reach out or they've got questions, the thing that actually works the best when it comes to this course is people from that town often reach out. I mean, I had a small town actually up along the Canadian border. It was their rural volunteer fire department, for example, heard about the class. And they had 3 suicides in the last 18 months.
Oh, man.
And so they wanted to bring it to their very small community.
Right.
They had people travel in from multiple towns around the area. But they, for example, just reached out and wanted to host the training. If a team, organization, business wants to do a private one in-house, they can reach out. If there's chambers or different connections in the community where they want to host a public one, they can reach out. So a lot of people, you can go to my website. It's just callithorne.com.
Okay.
Or they can email me at thorneleadership@gmail.com. But they can find all my info online or follow me on Instagram, Facebook, all of those social media places as well.
Well, thank you, Calli. What great resources.
Yeah. So we always follow up at this point with our host halftime. So do you have trivia questions for us based on some of the things
what's really... What's funny is I do, but I don't think I really covered them. So we're just going to be guessing.
That's okay.
That's
I'm
how
feeling
we do it around here.
Okay.
Yep, make it challenging.
Good.
We like those. So whenever you're ready, you can ask us the first question, and then we'll show you and tell you the answer, and whoever's closest.
We'll see. I meant to mention this one, but I didn't. So we'll see if you know. It was making national news headlines. Within a little over a year ago, it became public. There is a number that people can call or text if they are struggling and they need help and need to talk to someone.
Okay, I think I might know, but I don't know.
It's a number. Again, they can call or text it if they or someone they know is struggling. The interesting thing that a lot of people don't know is that number will take them locally here in North Dakota. It's a national number, but they will get somebody here in North Dakota, which is pretty cool.
Okay. What'd you put?
I put help.
Is it 511?
So I always laugh because in my classes when I bring this up, people always list like the call before you dig number and stuff like that.
That's important too.
I think that's 811 maybe.
What is it, Calli? It's not 511?
So
is that what you said?
The answer,
it's not help.
Answer is it's not help. I mean, maybe you could text that. But it's 988.
Oh, 988.
Oh, okay.
988.
Yes.
Okay.
So I always tell people, picture it on your phone. Like instead of 911 for an emergency, it's 988. You can call it or text it.
Okay.
If, like I said, if you or someone you know is needing help or needing to talk with someone.
Oh, that's good information.
Yes.
Clearly, we needed to know that. Yikes.
Okay, next one. I did not cover this either, so this will be a shot in the dark, but I'll give you some tips.
Okay.
So there's a handful of mental health disorders, and I'll give you even multiple choice here.
Okay.
But there is one that has the highest mortality rate. So when you think of mental health disorders, I'm going to give you one of these is the answer, okay? These are mental health disorders. So there's depressive disorders, substance use, PTSD, anxiety, bipolar, psychotic, eating disorders. Out of all of those, one of them has the highest mortality rate. Which one do you think it is? Or do you know? Depressive, substance use, bipolar, psychotic, anxiety.
I put depressive.
Okay, so this is a big surprise to everybody. The one with the highest mortality rate at 10% is actually eating disorders.
Really?
Specifically,
Yeah, I should probably know
specifically anorexia. Yeah, and we talk about that a little bit in the class actually too, especially, and I could go on another soapbox, but social media and young girls
I can't even
specifically and what is happening
I
right
mean, it was
now.
hard
And I
when
think
we were growing up. And now it's
Right.
the things we see on social. I mean, we just saw magazines and that was tough.
Yep.
Now every single day they're being bombarded with these images that just aren't reality.
Right.
So that's a big one.
Sad.
Okay. Last one.
Okay, you're gonna laugh at this one, but I think it'll be handy. You just look down at your boards right now, so you don't end up cheating. Okay, both of you look down at your boards.
Okay.
How do you spell my first and last name? No looking anywhere if it's on your papers.
Oh.
Everybody always spells it wrong, so I think this will be helpful if people need to go to my website or find me.
Is there an E? I don't know.
Oh,
shoot.
look at
I
that.
put an E. Did you put an E too?
Gosh, I thought it
That
was.
is so fun.
Spell it.
So
You got your last name
clearly
right.
Everybody spells it wrong. I always say no E on Calli, E on Thorne, and it starts with a C like
C.
California.
Okay.
CALLI.
Yep.
And then Thorne is THORNE.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll write it correctly for those of you watching.
There we go.
There we go. That's the answer. So none of us won
I feel like we both won.
secretly.
You
We
could do
won
it that
with
way. Yeah, see?
information. We're just gonna split
Instead
it.
of
Yep.
instead of we both lost, how about we
both
both won,
win.
right?
Yep.
See, positive.
Yes.
We're both winners because we learned a lot from you today, Calli.
And that was fun, Calli.
Yes.
I love how you could take such a difficult topic, right?
Yeah.
At times, and you made
Kinda
it
spin
fun.
That's what I
spin it into how
that's
can we
what's-
help?
Yes.
Right?
in a lot of people's minds, right? Especially when it comes to ag and this topic, it is heavy and it's hard. And to be honest, I was in Bible study this morning and a friend, we all say what we want to pray for, and a friend said that they lost a neighbor to suicide in the ranching industry just last night. You know, and it can be a heavy topic, and it's what we started talking off about, though, is I don't want to be the fourth generation. My kids don't want to be the generation to lose this operation.
Right.
And that's a lot of weight on people. There's stories and things that tie into that. But I think when it's talked about more, it's brought to light. And we know that, hey, this is something that happens to people, even people who we maybe think have it all together, but they need people to talk to. We need to have conversations. We need to take care of ourselves. And just starting right there is going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. So we have one final question that we ask our guests. And what is your favorite part of being involved with the North Dakota agriculture community? We always hear people. Is there something else that really resonates with you and stands out?
I think for me, it's getting to know my family history, like the history that is here. I can talk about that on my operation. I know stories from my mom and dad, from my grandma and grandpa, from my great and my great-greats ancestors. And I've read stories. I've heard the stories of what it was like. I sometimes can only imagine what they faced here and now how it's changed so much for us.
Right.
I mean, it's completely different. We complain if the radio goes out of the tractor, and they had horses.
Right,
I mean, it was such a different situation, but I think that also just ties to, for me personally, my faith, like how I truly get to live that out and have God's hand when I walk in all of this. When I see the good and I see those calves and I see the green grass and I see the rain come, and I know where that's coming from. Like I know who to thank, and even in those hardships, relying on my faith, because we have those as well. And so how do we get through that? It's that community, it's those people. But I think when we have a strong faith, we can go anywhere with it.
I love
That's great.
Well, thank you for all your information, Calli. We appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll have to have you back to learn what you teased us about earlier.
You will. There's a couple things exciting coming down the pipes, but I better keep it at that for now. And thank you guys for allowing me to share. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Calli. Whew, that was good.
That was really good. So do you remember the number?
What?
988.
Oh, yes. I thought, oh gosh, there's so many numbers.
Which number, Jennifer, are you talking about?
988. Yes, 988. Yes. The way I remembered that is I think of the 8s like as hugs. Because you know how they crisscross?
Oh, yeah, that's a good way.
Yeah, 988.
I love it. I love it. So we know now how we can get a hold of Calli. We know the number if you're dealing with something that you just don't, you want somebody else's perspective. And like we know like, hey, it's okay to talk about
this. Reach out, say it, text.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to somebody, ask, right? If you have a question, it is important. Because again, that's showing signs of caring.
Right.
So, and we all need that.
Yes,
we all need it.
Yes, we do.
So
that was great.
Yeah. So tune in anywhere you listen to your podcast to Common Ground ND. And you can watch us on YouTube if you love our facial expressions and want to see our corn trophy.
Yes.
But until next time, thanks for watching.
See you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Common Ground North Dakota podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Most importantly, send us your questions about North Dakota agriculture by visiting our website. You might win a prize. We'll see you in the next episode of the Common Ground North Dakota podcast.